The billionaire banned prayers in his home, then froze as the black maid taught his children. Jonathan Whitmore had built his empire on logic, not faith. In his world, numbers made sense. Data could be measured. Results could be predicted. Faith, in his opinion, was for people who needed comfort when they couldn't find answers. So when the tech billionaire moved into his newly purchased Manhattan mansion overlooking the Hudson River, he made one rule very clear. No prayers in this house. Not at dinner. Not before bed. Not even a whispered, "God bless you." His two children, 8-year-old Ava and 10-year-old Noah, didn't fully understand the rule. They only understood that when they once bowed their heads at the table like they used to with their late mother, their father's face had hardened. "We don't do that anymore," he had said firmly. The house had been quiet ever since. The Whitmore mansion was breathtaking. White marble floors, crystal chandeliers imported from Italy, artwork worth millions lining the walls. But despite the beauty, it often felt cold. After his wife, Emily, passed away from cancer 2 years earlier, Jonathan changed. He stopped smiling. He stopped celebrating birthdays properly. He stopped believing. Emily had been the warm one. The one who lit candles on Sundays. The one who whispered prayers into her children's ears before they slept. Jonathan had held her hand in the hospital as she took her last breath. He had prayed that night. Prayed harder than he ever had in his life. She died anyway. The next morning, he decided he was done with faith. When Lillian Carter was hired as the new housemaid, she sensed the tension immediately. She was in her mid-50s, originally from South Carolina, with soft brown eyes and a steady voice that carried both strength and gentleness. She had raised 3 children on her own. She had buried her husband 15 years earlier. She had leaned on prayer when nothing else held her up. But she never forced her beliefs on anyone. On her first day, she noticed something small. At dinner, Ava instinctively reached for her brother's hand under the table. Noah squeezed back. They both glanced at their father, then quickly let go. Lillian pretended not to see, but she understood. One rainy Thursday afternoon, the children were in the playroom while Jonathan was locked away in his home office, negotiating a multi-million-dollar merger. Thunder rumbled outside. The lights flickered. Ava jumped. "I don't like storms," she whispered. Noah tried to act brave. "It's just weather." But when a loud crack of thunder shook the windows, Ava's eyes filled with tears. Lillian, folding laundry nearby, walked in. "It's all right, baby," she said softly. "My mom used to pray during storms," Ava whispered without thinking. The room fell silent. Noah looked toward the office door nervously. "Dad said we can't." Lillian knelt down to their level. "Well," she said gently, "sometimes prayer isn't about rules. Sometimes it's just about talking." "To who?" Noah asked. "To hope," she replied. The thunder roared again. Ava grabbed Lillian's hand. "Can you show us?" Lillian hesitated. She knew the rule, but she also saw fear in a child's eyes. So she bowed her head slightly, not dramatically, not loudly. "Dear Lord," she whispered softly, "thank you for keeping us safe. Please calm Ava's heart and help Noah feel strong. And watch over this home." Her voice wasn't preachy. It was comforting, like a warm blanket on a cold night. Ava's breathing slowed. Noah's shoulders relaxed. And behind the partially open office door, Jonathan Whitmore stood frozen. He had come out to ask for silence during his call. Instead, he heard her. He felt something tighten in his chest. That evening, he called Lillian into the study. "I was clear about the rules," he said, his voice controlled but sharp. "Yes, sir," she replied calmly. "You prayed with them. They were scared. That's not the point." "With respect, sir," she said gently, "I didn't teach them religion. I helped them feel safe." Jonathan exhaled heavily. "Faith didn't save my wife." Lillian didn't respond immediately. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said finally. "Truly." He looked away. "But sometimes," she continued softly, "prayer isn't about changing what happens. It's about changing what happens inside us." Jonathan clenched his jaw. "This house doesn't need superstition," he said firmly. Lillian nodded respectfully. "Understood." She left the room without argument. But Jonathan couldn't sleep that night. Days passed. Then weeks. He noticed small things. Ava humming softly before bed. Noah pausing quietly before eating, even if he didn't bow his head. He noticed laughter returning in small bursts. The house didn't feel quite as cold. One evening, Jonathan came home earlier than usual. He heard voices from the living room. Curious, he stopped at the doorway. Ava and Noah were sitting with Lillian on the floor. Not praying, talking. "What do you miss most about Mom?" Lillian asked gently. "Her pancakes," Noah said. "Her hugs," Ava whispered. "And what do you think she'd want for you now?" Lillian asked. Noah thought for a moment. "To be brave," Ava nodded. "To be kind." Jonathan's throat tightened. Lillian smiled at them. "Then maybe that's the best way to remember her." Jonathan stepped into the room. The children looked up nervously. He studied Lillian's face. "You talk about their mother often?" he asked quietly. "Only when they want to," she said. He nodded slowly. For the first time, he didn't correct her. The real turning point came unexpectedly. Jonathan's company was facing a major crisis. Stocks plummeted overnight after a faulty software update caused global disruptions. Investors were furious. Media outlets were brutal. He returned home late, defeated. As he loosened his tie in the dark kitchen, he heard a small voice. "Dad." It was Noah. "I couldn't sleep," his son said. Jonathan forced a smile. "Big day tomorrow." Noah hesitated. "When I get nervous," he said quietly, "Miss Lillian says I can talk to God like he's listening." Jonathan stiffened. "And does that help?" he asked carefully. Noah nodded. "It makes me feel less alone." Jonathan swallowed. He looked at his son. Really looked at him. "Do you feel alone?" he asked softly. "Sometimes," Noah admitted. Something inside Jonathan cracked. He had been so busy fighting the world that he hadn't realized his children were fighting their own quiet battles. "Would you like to talk?" Jonathan asked. Noah nodded. They sat at the kitchen table. No grand speeches. No dramatic prayers. Just a father and son talking honestly about fear, pressure, and missing someone they loved. From the hallway, unseen, Lillian listened, not intruding, just present. Jonathan's voice trembled slightly as he admitted, "I stopped praying because I was angry." Noah looked confused. "At God?" "Yes." "Are you still?" Jonathan paused. He didn't know. A week later, on the anniversary of Emily's passing, the house felt heavy. Jonathan had always spent the day working, avoiding the memory. But this year was different. That evening, he found Ava sitting by the fireplace holding her mother's old scarf. "I miss her," she whispered. "I know," he said, sitting beside her. "Can we say something for her?" Ava asked hesitantly. Jonathan felt the old resistance rise. Then he remembered Noah's words. "I feel less alone." He looked toward the hallway where Lillian stood quietly, giving him space. Jonathan took a deep breath. "Yes," he said softly. They gathered in the living room. No elaborate ceremony, no forced ritual, just Jonathan, Ava, Noah, and Lillian standing respectfully nearby. Jonathan cleared his throat. "Emily," he began quietly, his voice unsteady, "we miss you. We're trying our best." Ava squeezed his hand. Noah added, "We're being brave." Jonathan closed his eyes, not out of habit, but out of surrender. For the first time since her death, he wasn't praying for a miracle. He was simply speaking from his heart. When he opened his eyes, he noticed something. The house felt different, not because rules had changed, but because walls had lowered. He turned toward Lillian. "Thank you," he said quietly. She smiled gently. "You did that yourself." Jonathan shook his head slightly. "No," he admitted. "You reminded us how." He walked to the dining room the next evening and paused before sitting down. The children watched carefully. Jonathan glanced at them, then at Lillian. He didn't make a big announcement. He simply reached for his children's hands. No words at first, just silence filled with meaning. Ava smiled. Noah squeezed tighter. And Jonathan Whitmore, the billionaire who once banned prayers from his home, realized that faith had never been about control. It had always been about connection.